We're back here on the Duncan Duo Show. Andrew Duncan with the Duncan Duo team, Robert Johnson with the Duncan Duo team, Mike Yates at Atlantic Bay Mortgage, and our special guest Bob Henriquez with the Hillsborough County Property Appraiser's Office. And we were talking in the break about portability, and so we decided not to talk about it. We wanted to throw the conversation on air because we think it's something that there's probably just as many consumers as we are that sometimes get confused about portability. So Bob's going to break it down for us and help us understand the benefit of portability.
Sure. Well, first of all, the history of portability was that when we passed the constitutional amendment for Save Our Homes and capped properties, it had the unintended consequences that then folks had this great tax benefit if they stayed in their homes for a long period of time. Not very good for you guys because
then they don't want to move.
Because they can't move, really,
right.
Or they're stuck there.
Right.
So portability is this idea of allowing you to take a portion of that tax benefit to your new home to lower the initial taxable value. And the way that works, and we talked a little bit earlier about Mike's situation, is that there's a differential between the taxable value based on the cap value when you homestead that property and the actual market value over the course of time. And so, let's say the home was worth $300,000 in terms of market value, but you've been there for 20 years. When you when you homestead the property, it was worth $150,000. So you're only paying on $150,000
in taxes.
Yep. And of course you can take the homestead exemption off that and all those kinds of things. But let's say that there's a $150,000 differential between the taxable value and the market value. That portion you're entitled to port with you over the course of those 2 tax years to your new home to lower the initial taxable value of the new home. It's dollar for dollar up to $500,000 if you're upsizing. And it's a percentage if you're downsizing that you can take.
So in other words, if you're so just to use a simple math, and let's say you've got a $200,000 house, and it's got $100,000 in portability, and you're buying a $400,000 house. When you buy that $400,000 house, now the $100,000 comes off of the assessment.
Right. Is as of January 1st of the year in which you buy that.
Okay. That $100,000 comes off. You basically
our assessment is that house is worth $400,000. Then you would pay on $300,000, and then on top of that, you take off your homestead exemption and what have you.
And that stays permanently.
Yeah, and that's in perpetuity.
That's awesome.
That's forever.
Yeah. I think
as long as you're homesteaded in that house, yeah. It is.
So and again, I think that's where I'm going to have to look at how long I own the home that I was in before, and then measure to see what because for me. I think that's obviously it's going to be close, the math I'm going to have.
Yeah, and again, I encourage folks, when they're doing their due diligence, whether they're looking to sell a home or they're looking to buy a home, to look at those things. If you're selling your home, well, how long, if it's later in the year, we're not quite ready to buy again, or we're not sure, understand that you've got, check and see how much portability you have, so you've got to set your plans for when you want to make that move again. For buyers, and we can work with folks. You
can basically tell them. I mean, like if somebody, let's say somebody's really bad at math, and I'm good at math, so I can figure it out. But let's say there's a customer out there who's really bad at math, and they can't figure it out. And they said, "Here's my scenario." You could help them and say, "Well, here's how much portability you have." Just so.
And that's on their trim notice.
Okay.
So it's on our website. They can look that up at a given time, or they can go on the mobile app and look at it right there.
There you go.
So all the information's out there, so they'll know. Now again. Understand portability is based on January 1st of that year. So if they're looking at it, say right now, or let's say a couple months ago, because we probably already updated the numbers to the new numbers for next year. But it may go up. It may go up an additional 8-10% depending on where they live next year. So they'll have a little bit more portability next year.
Yeah, that's awesome. So Mike, I wanted to bring you in on the tax conversation to talk about escrows. A lot of people don't realize this, but unless they put a substantial amount of money down when they purchase a home, the lender is going to require them to escrow their property taxes and their homeowner's insurance, sometimes their flood insurance, any other requirements of the lender. Now, you guys obviously being a local lender and kind of having the trenches in the local community, I haven't heard from our customers complaints about this, but we regularly hear from customers of other mortgage lenders that have bought a home with us, shame on them.
Right, exactly.
And they've come back and said, hey, my mortgage lender has increased my tax escrow, and sometimes it's an astronomical number to where it doesn't make sense. Like you look at it and you're like, where did they come up with this number? Because it just doesn't make sense. And we find that with out-of-area lenders. They'll maybe not do a lot of loans in Florida. They're doing a lot of loans in New Jersey or New York or something, and they're basing their escrows on historical figures for the market that they're used to working in. So another benefit of working with a local lender is really understanding the taxes in the local market, because those escrows and how those lenders determine that can vary from lender to lender.
Right, and I'll kind of start with the new construction too, because you know, with the land, as a lender, you don't want your client to get hit with that big tax bill.
Because you're afraid it'll go defunct.
Exactly, and what we do on the front end, and we work with the title companies on this as well, is to do an estimated tax, and you can use the property appraiser's website.
So they start funding it ahead of time, so
Exactly.
there's money in that account when it
Right,
comes due.
we start doing it immediately. Now, it's no fun for the buyer because they're technically paying higher taxes at that point than they should be. But it's
funding the account up so that they don't have a shortage or an increase later on.
Exactly.
Which I think tends to rock people a little bit more.
Oh, yeah.
They're not budgeted for it. I mean, in essence, the money that goes into your escrow account's your money anyway. It's just a matter of whether you put more in there so that you're kind of safe if you get hit with a bigger bill, or whether you're the type that would rather not do that and keep some of your money and then roll the dice on whether you get hit with a large increase in taxes or insurance. But the reality is a lot of lenders, mess that up.
They do.
And they mess it up on multiple angles. And when the consumer gets frustrated the most is when there's some large increase. So it's probably better that you guys are doing that ahead of time, because a year later they're going to forget all this stuff, and then when the payment gets jacked up to cover the shortage on the tax bill, then they're all in an uproar. When they don't realize, well, it was because you kind of got a little bit of a good deal for a year. You didn't have to pay all this.
And I have that conversation with my clients and borrowers as well, as when this thing resets and your tax bill is higher, are you going to have $2,000, $3,000